All right, hey you guys. Today is July 11th, and we are going to do an update on following Jesus. Now, I am misfollowing Jesus. I am following Jesus still, though I am home in Massachusetts. Now, it may seem strange for people because I was on this huge, exciting journey and I flew all the way all over the country, and then now I am just Massachusetts. And this is where I call home. And people are probably like, okay, so God called her away from school and she was flying all the way over around the country, and now she's back home in Massachusetts. Like, she must be a joke. She is a joke. Like, did she really hear God? And you know what? It's crazy because, like, some days of course, I know exactly what's going on, but not everybody knows exactly what's going on with my life, which is just, yeah. So I have made videos, like, totally explaining what's going on, but I'm not going to post them up until after everything has came together, because I know what God's doing in my life. But like I said, Joseph shared his vision of where God was going to take him, and yeah, all heck broke loose. So yeah, it just broke loose. But what I will share with you guys is a few things. Basically, like, when God first, called me away, it was very exciting. And, and it's still exciting. I can't even say it's not exciting anymore. But he called me away, and I was doing all this traveling, and everything was cool. And now I'm home. And in that process, God has been, allowing me to write books on my experience. My books are semi-finished. I'm actually God has me working on 4 at a time. Well, 4 right now. And then I've started the other 3, but I'm working on 4. Actually, I have 8 books. I just started a new one today. So I have 8 books. So they're going to come out. Well, I'm in the process. I'm almost finished with the first one. And the second one is halfway done too. So I'm very excited for those, but that's one place that God is taking me, so I'm very excited. But when God first told me where it is that he was taking me, I was like, okay, God, this just seems so strange. Like, it seems strange. And to society, like, everyone will look at me like, okay, Jazz, really? Did you just quit school for that? What God told you to do? Did you quit school for that? God told you to quit for that. Wow, Jazz. But what I've learned is that anything outside of God's will is not God's will. And I look at situations and cases like, I had a pastor before, and growing up he was a gang member and he was shooting with guns and all that other stuff. And then around 40 he got saved, and when he got saved he became a pastor, after God called him to be a pastor. Now it's kind of like this. It's like if I was in his shoes and I was in the gang at that point. Okay, we'll just use my life. When I was in the world, if you would have told me, Jazz, you will be sitting on YouTube making Bible study lesson videos and helping people and telling people about Jesus, let me tell you, I would have laughed. I would have straight laughed. Like, I would have been like, look, there is nothing in my life that represents Christ at this point in time in my life. What do you mean I'm going to change and I'm going to look, I'm going to do this and do that. And so when God told me in the place in my life where I was going to be, now I wasn't there yet. At that point in my life, I was still bitter. I was still angry. And I was like, okay, God, you want me to what? No. There's no way. But it's the same scenario, except for this time, actually in the middle of my life, someone at a point where I wasn't where I needed to be, God interrupted and said, Jazz, this is where I want you to be. And what? So, of course, just like everybody else, I was like, well, wow, I couldn't see it, and I couldn't see it. Now, as the process has gone along, it's been 7 months, and I've came a long way in 7 months. And what I really want to explain to a lot of people is that, when God calls you to a place in your life, it doesn't matter if you're not in the right place. He will prepare you along the way to get to where you need to be. Because at first I couldn't see it, and I was so hard-hearted. I was like, no, God, no. But, in 7 months, that just shows you how much God can do in a short amount of time. Time is nothing to God. And in 7 months is really it took years, literally years, okay, for, I sat in counseling. I sat in lockup. I sat in all that other stuff, and they could not help me at all. And God did all this reconstruction, and I mean, it's been a lot. God has literally, if you had a thick book, this wouldn't even be the book size of all the stuff he's done for me in 7 months and all the things that he's poured into me in 7 months. It wouldn't even amount to that much. Oh my gosh, it'd be like books upon books upon books upon books upon books upon books of all the stuff that God has literally poured into me, has allowed me to change in my life, has, opened my eyes to, in 7 months. I feel like some kind of super genius. He's just like, poor Jasmine, okay, this, and I'm like, okay, God, okay. It's just crazy, all the stuff that he's done. But, God will prepare you for where he's taking you. And, it has opened my eyes a lot. I'm really blessed, just to think, wow, a few months ago, God just came into my life. And if he would have told me before I left school, this is where I'm taking you, I'd have been like, mm-mm. But then you look at, people like Abraham, you look at people like Abraham. God didn't reveal everything to Abraham until he let go of certain things in his life, until he did certain steps, and that's how God was. He kept revealing different things to me after I let go of things. Because we, as people, we get to a point in our lives where we won't let go of certain things if God tells us everything at one time. And that's true. That would have been me, because I'm not going to lie. There were some days in my life, especially when God first told me where he was taking me, I was like, if you would have told me that, God, I would have not left school. And, this is just to be honest, this is real. It's not, but I know that it's God's will for my life, of course, now. But at first, I was just like, I don't know how you are about to do that. I was hard-hearted and bitter and just angry and just, I had a lot of work. And so, the one thing that God has taught me along this way, which, I look at certain things in my life, which a lot of people will look in my life and be like, well, Jazz, look at where you are now. You're at home. What are you doing at home? You were on this amazing journey. You were doing all that stuff. But I help a lot of people. I pour into a lot of people. And there were parts of my area, in my life where I was still holding on to it. Now, friend, if all this is whole from my shoulders down, is whole and complete within me, and all right here, is not whole, I am not a whole person. So God still had to work on some things in my life. If I cut my head off, I'm not a whole person. I have no head. I have no head. So basically God had to do some restoring into my life and rebuild me. Now, a lot of people were like, well, Jazz, what do you mean? I could have gone my whole life with all this issues in my life and never let it go. And I remember I was talking to my boyfriend. We were best friends at the time, and he used to say, Jazz, he said, you do your best to make everybody around you happy and try to help everybody. But you want to do for people. That's what you do. But it's never about, what is it within you? And it's true, because I came to a point where I was like, God, well, I don't want certain things for my life, and, God was talking to me about, I'll give you the desires of your heart. And there was one point in my life where God, he told me he was going to give me something in my life. But people, I had a real hard time with, people in my life. And when people tell me certain things, and it was someone really close to me, but, I wanted something for my life that God told me about from my life. And literally the person who was really close to me, like, sat there and was like, well, I don't see that for your life. And I don't think that's going to happen for your life. I think you're just going to help people and da 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 da. And it really, like, hurt me, because I actually took what was the desire of my heart, which God had, was giving me hints and clues along the way that he was going to do in my life. And I actually, like, crumpled it up like a piece of paper and threw it in the trash, But I thank God that he sees through those walls that we put up. He sees through the damage that's within us. And I'm thankful for it, because I don't know if if it wasn't for him, not telling me exactly where I was going at first. And I don't think that I would have been here, because, when I first started this journey, I had my, I want my cake and eat it too, vision of where God was taking me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I was basically, this is God's will. This is Jasmine's will. And I was going like this. Okay, God, I'm just going to go on your will and my will, but my will is going to cover your will, and it's okay. Until one day I sat there and was like, okay, God, I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm stuck again. Okay, what is really your will? And my will was just like, God's will was like, okay, go away, go away. And so it was just God's will for my life. And I had to get to a point where I wanted God's will for my life, and not just put put my own will over his will. What is it that, even if it looked that crazy, to the rest of the world, one of my best friends was like, I shared with them a little something of where God was taking me, and they were like, Jazz, are you serious? Like, you're telling me you left school for that? And, it's really harsh, and it's really hard, and I have to remind myself all the time, because, I did a lesson on Noah's Ark and preparing to build the ark. But I think about, situations like Noah, all that, all the things of the world were going on around him, but Noah had to stay focused on the ark. And God's will for my life is my ark. And though there are things going on in the world that people would rather have me doing, that, I could get into, it does not matter, because if I do not build my ark, it's going to flood, and I'm going to be left and drowned behind with the rest of the world. And so I want to do God's will. I look at it like that, because if Noah would have been like, look, I'm not building this ark. All right, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. I'm just going to go. No, God gave me special instructions on where it is that and what it was that he wanted me to do. Now I have to do it, And I mean, I remember at one point, I was asking, I had went somewhere, and, these people had kind of made me feel bad. They were like, well, don't you need a degree to do that, and all this other stuff. And, to me, I was just like, okay, God, I didn't get mad, but it kind of hurt my heart a little and all that stuff. And I was just like, all right, God, I'm trusting you, And I just kept repeating to myself, okay, you're building an ark. You're building an ark, though it seems strange to everybody else. You're building an ark. It's going to be all right, Jazz. And so, it is going to be all right, and it's still like, that was probably like three months ago. And recently the same thing has happened to me, people that I really love, they kind of like make these, jokes. I mean, it shouldn't hurt, but me being a person, it does hurt. But, trusting in God and knowing what God said he's going to do, I try to push it to the side, and though it can be hard sometimes. But there's a lot of things that I've learned in this process. Like, I'm home and I get to see my friends. One of my biggest struggles was in college was coming home because none of my friends are saved. But when I was back in school, when I was in college, I had a plethora of friends who were serving God and doing God's will and doing the things of God, and when I come home, it's like, okay, I'll only do things if, I don't have to use my ID, or if we're doing something constructive, like going to the zoo or this and that and that. So like, it's like I have to lay down ground rules on the things that I'll do, versus me when when I was in, school, my friends already, they didn't do those things either, versus now. So I think that's, been the hardest struggle. But like, there's been so many doors that have opened. I've been able to pray and fast and seek God, and I've seen changes in other people's lives. I look at in the Bible when it talks about when John the Baptist had went to jail and he sent the 2 disciples to Jesus, and Jesus had sent back a word back to John the Baptist saying, the blind are the blind see, and the leopards are healed, and all those things, just because John the Baptist had prepared the way for Jesus. In the process, he followed Jesus before, he knew his calling before, and he made the way for Jesus, as any follower of Jesus should do. And so he was following what Jesus, would want him to do, and he made the way for him. And so I think about it like that, though I don't see some like, until the end, until everything's done, I won't see the bigger picture, of what God was doing in the process. It's like an artist, you sit there, you see them painting, and they don't tell you what they're painting, and then when they're finished painting, it all comes together, and I look at some of the things that happened in my life, and people, look down on me now because they're like, Jazz, like, what are you doing? And, I look at it like, I used to tell my old roommate in college, like, whenever I used to clean my room, I used to make a big mess, and I was the creator of the mess, and it's kind of like, God told me to leave school, and, it's kind of like, all right, God, you got me here, okay? And all I see is like this huge mess around me. What is going on? But just like I told my roommate at the time, I'd say, roommate, do you see it? And God's probably sitting up in heaven like, Jazz, do you see it? Yeah, just waiting, as he's slowly putting the different pieces back where they need to be, because some pieces have gotten out of order, and so finally, when you're done cleaning your room, everything's back to normal. And I used to say, okay, now do you see it? And of course, she couldn't see it because she wasn't the creator of the mess, but because I knew where all the pieces went, I was more able to see what it was going to look like, envision what it was going to look like in the ending. And so that's what I'm trusting God, because all I see is the mess, but it doesn't matter because I'm not I don't see the final product, but God sees the final product, and that's what matters, is that God sees the final product. All I have to keep trusting is, yeah, it's gonna look good at the end, because what it looks like at the end when all the pieces are in the right place. Just like with me when I clean my room. It's another thing that I've learned is, that God has prepared me. Like I said, I was very hard-hearted, and there's a lot of things that made me, that way. And God was, really trying to fix those things. And I mean, like I said, my boyfriend had been like, well, Jazz, why don't you ever, want to be happy? And, I have joy. I do. But I always wanted to do for other people. It was always about other people. It wasn't about, okay, Jasmine, what do you really want for your life? Like, people always will tell you, like, I did for other people. Like my ministry, like when I left school, and I was following, the first thing I said when I followed God, what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow God, I'm going to do for people, and then I just want to go to heaven. That's all I really want from this lifetime. Like my whole thing was just getting to heaven. What I want in return, just give me my needs and what I need to get me through life, and that's it. Because like anything, depending, like everything in this world, what if you worship it will bring you to hell. Like, not saying, like for instance, I as a person may struggle with one thing, but you as another person may struggle with another thing. And then another person may struggle with another thing. And another person may struggle with the other thing. So like there are people who struggle with different things and worship different things, and all those things in a whole, like for instance, someone may worship the American dream over God and then end up going to hell because of it. Someone may worship doing drugs and living for the world and may go to hell for it. Someone may, think it's their works and go to hell for it. Or some, all those, but, not just in a whole. We won't all just, go to hell just because of all those things. But, we don't want to, but, that's, my mentality, because, I read my Bible so much. It's like, let me tell you, there were probably 3 back pages on this thing. It is gone, okay? Gone. Like, this thing is gone. Like, oh my gosh. And that's so horrible, but like, and I'm not saying that I treat my Bible bad, like, that's horrible. Look, my page ripped. That is horrible. Like, it's horrible, but like, I do so much, and so I consume so much, and at one point it was just like, wow, and so I didn't want anything that the world had to offer me. I was just like, okay, I said, God, I'll be just satisfied alone if I could just serve God and just help people and then go to heaven, like I don't want anything this world has to offer me. Like, I don't even care if I sleep on the streets and just tell people about Jesus all day. That's where I was. Like, I was so sold out. Like, okay, I'm down, God. Like, what, and then when God told me where he was taking me, I was just like, huh? Oh, okay. All right, this is a little different from what I expected, but all right. So, it's been an interesting process, and so like, I'm just glad that God sees the desires of your heart, because like in the preparation of it all, like literally, like I. And it's crazy because my friends, they get to help me without even understanding how to help me, because they know better than I do, because they've been, in this, realm a long time, for actually a while now, better than I do. And so it's great because actually, other people get to help me in an area where I don't know, because I've never been in that area in my life, versus them because they have. And so it's it's beautiful, it's a great experience, and I love God for it. But like I said, my biggest issue though that has bothered me was, the whole people, kind of looking down at me and being like, okay, Jazz, like, look where you were doing so good to the world. And like I said, it doesn't matter, if you're doing really good to the world. You look at the people, like, look at the rich young ruler. He had everything this world had to offer him. But when Jesus went this way down the road, he went this way down the road. And so he didn't make it. We gotta think about things like that, and if I would have been like, okay, Jesus called me to follow him, and I would have been like, oh, okay, well, and I would have known where he was taking me, in that process, if I would have been like, oh, you want to take me there, God? Oh, you want to take me there, Jesus? Okay, that doesn't sound right to me. If I would have went this way and he would have went this way, I wouldn't have been where I needed to be with God. I wouldn't have been there. And so, like, you know, I look at like people like Joseph. Like I said, Joseph, God gave him the vision of where he was going to be. His brothers got jealous of him, put him into slavery. Then he, you know, when he was in slavery, he got raised up, and then Potiphar's wife tried to sleep with him, and then went back to jail, and then finally he got to the place where he needed to be. But there was a lot of things that he had to go through in the process. And I look at his life, because I look at my life too, and I think this is the one thing that keeps me holding on, looking at his life, because like I said, from a young age, when I was younger, I remember looking out the window and asking God, certain things for my life. I didn't know what I was going to have to go through it. And then I told you guys in my testimony video, at 15, I was still living my life my own way, but I still had a little faith in God. But I remember looking out the window at 15 years old saying, God, you ain't even real. And I remember I said, I wouldn't be going through all this stuff. And you look at people like Joseph, and then he got raised up. He got raised up, and he was doing good in Potiphar's house, and that's where I was. I was in college, and that was my Potiphar's house. But then Jesus called me away, and then look at Joseph, and Potiphar's wife tried to take advantage of him, and then he ended up getting thrown in jail. And then I look at myself, and Jesus called me away, and now I'm back home. But that doesn't faze me, because I know where God brought me from. I know, okay, I remember being in the streets, when God brought me from A to B, and so if this time God's the one calling me away, and I'm not just doing it on my own, why wouldn't he bring me to A to B? So when everybody looks at me and then kind of looks down at me, I have to keep reminding myself, like, A to B, and then you go back down to A, but it's okay, because I'm going to be back there, and it may not be the way the world wants me to be there, but it's going to be the way that Christ originally intended it to be. Because what I've learned, and I say it in a lot of my videos, is the world has a plan for your life. You have a plan for your life. Your mom and dad have a plan for your life. The devil has a plan for your life, and God has a plan for your life. And I don't care, like I said, I'm building an ark, and though I may look crazy when it rains, I'm going to be where I need to be when it comes to God, and because I did the right thing and I followed Jesus. So this is just an update, and I know it was a very long update on things that are happening as I follow Jesus, but it's not always easy. I'm not going to say that I always have easy days and stuff like that, but I am writing my books, and I'm very encouraged on where God has taken me. It's a long waiting process. Like, for me, we live in a microwave society, but of course, if I get the things that God has for me early, I won't be right for them. So that's why I'm very glad that God is preparing me so that I can be in the right place of where I need to be when he does give me those things in which he wants to give me. So I'm very grateful and thankful. But I love you guys so much, and I encourage you to stay tuned. I'm going to actually be doing another video on preparing to build an ark, but this is going to be on the ark with Moses that he was in when he was going down the Nile River, and it's on preserving a generation. So we will talk about that. I'm very excited. But that video in a whole is going to start breaking down into different segment videos itself, because it talks about preparing to save a generation talks about when God, basically when God gives you a vision, he can give you a vision of a few things. And so like I said, Noah's Ark, preserving the family, saving the family, and stuff like that. God wants your family to be saved, so he could put you in a situation where he wants your family to be saved, and so he has you build an ark. Or he could put you into a situation where he wants to preserve the family, meaning he could give you a son, and because the son carries on the last name. And then we'll talk about the ark of the covenant, meaning, well, we'll go into that. I'm still gleaning and picking up the pieces of putting that lesson all together, so I can't give it to you all yet when I don't know all the information to it. But God, as all the lessons come together, He reveals more and more stuff to me. And like I said, I walk through this stuff myself. So, of course, one of the things you guys know is I am a lady in waiting. So, I do have a boyfriend, and that is the man who God wants me to be with. That's part of where I am going, and there's other things. So, I encourage you guys to stay tuned as I follow Jesus. So, I love you guys, and stay encouraged, and God bless. Peace.